Over the course of this semester and my math technology class, I really feel like I've become so much more excited about technology. I'm not as afraid to use it pretty much from day one. We were required to kind of like jump in and use it. Every single person in our class was given an iPad to rent for the semester. And one of our first assignments was to take this iPad home and create an educations video in which we had to, address a graph theory type of example or algebra or something that, we just felt kind of connected to. And I decided that I was going to do like a how many people type of educations video where you know how you see those videos where it's a clown car and the clowns just keep coming out of the car and coming out of the car and coming out of the car. Well, how do they fit that many people in a car? I mean, I was confused by that as a child. I can see why most people would be. So I thought about building off of that example and looking at this really cool house that we have in Blacksburg and being like, okay, so how many people could you fit in that house if you just like stacked people on top of each other and say they're this tall and they weigh this much and they're about this wide? How many people do you think you could be able to fit in that part? So it's really like a somewhat of a geometry problem, but also a problem that has to do with volume. And I just thought it would be something that would be really interesting. Well, recently, another project that we worked on was we got to use the CBR2s. They're motion detectors that you connect to your TI Nspire, and you could walk towards an object or walk back, and you're doing that to replicate the graph that is already on the page for you. I mean, these are really cool things that I would never have even thought to use when I was afraid to use technology. But now that I've had more experience with it, I can't wait to use programs and exciting technological pieces like that in my classroom. I don't know how I'm going to incorporate them yet, but this is going to be just kind of cool. How would I tie my feelings about technology to my teaching philosophy? Well, I guess that's kind of a good question. I'm not entirely sure exactly how I will use it yet, but I've gotten a lot of my inspiration for my teaching philosophy from Robert Moses's The Algebra Project, in which he goes into inner city schools and he encourages these kids to go out and take control of their own education and fight for their own education. It's almost like a civil rights movement for mathematics. I want my students to be that passionate about mathematics. I want them to take responsibility of their mathematics learning and really just kind of go for it and really be involved in doing math. Doing math is one of the process standards from NCTM, and it just basically is about kids sitting down, not necessarily doing like rote memorization and writing all this stuff out, but doing mathematics and actually sitting there and you can tell your students are learning. That's what I want my students to experience. And I want them to be in control of that. And I feel like this could be achievable through technology. We've done a lot of lessons that they have through the TI Nspires. They actually have it on the website. They have the student worksheet and the teacher worksheet. And by going through these lessons, I feel like I've learned the material in a way that I never thought was possible, and a way that would have been really interesting as a high school student. And I can't wait to see how my students respond to something like that, and maybe it might push them to take control of their own education. Once I become a math teacher, I plan on using technology when I see fit. I still want my students to understand those core values and the concepts behind everything before we really delve into technology. Once they once they understand the mathematics behind it, then I want them to be able to use the technology to just kind of like facilitate that gap so that we can kind of not be doing those like strenuous computations and can kind of move on to the real world problems or the problems that are more similar to something they'll see in college or out in their everyday life. I want the technology to play a crucial role in my students' education, but I don't want it to supplement their education. I'm not exactly sure how much technology I'll use, what technology exactly I will use, or how I will implement it at this point in time. But I feel like as I become more and more accustomed to technology and comfortable with it, I'll definitely be more willing to try new things and to really just kind of experiment in the classroom because just as much as it's a learning experience for my students, it's a learning experience for myself as a teacher as well. Because as a teacher, we're not just a teacher, we're a perpetual learner. And we have to show our students that just as they are willing to learn, we're willing to learn from them. So maybe my students might even bring in their own form of technology that they found or they thought was really interesting, and they'll bring it into the classroom and teach me something new. And then maybe I can use that in years after to really help my students learn. But until I'm actually have gone through grad school and have really worked on student teaching and then get my foot in the door in an actual classroom, then I think I'll understand exactly how much technology, when to use it, when not to use it, and really just how to use technology successfully. Just because I'm a mathematics education major doesn't mean that these same principles and these same ideals can apply to my English major as well. Although technology is not as widely used in the English classroom, unless, of course, we're talking about PowerPoint or a smartboard, but technology can still hold a vital role in English education as well. So many kids are now reading off of Nooks and iPads. I could get iPads for a classroom that the kids could work on apps that are based on grammar and punctuation and syntax. But a lot of the things that I would be using the technology for in English would be so very different from that of mathematics. In mathematics, the apps and the technology and the resources are really used to make it a hands on educational learning experience. In English, it's more, I would say, somewhat drills based because in English, it's about learning the proper way to put something, the proper way to write a sentence, where the commas go, where the periods go, to use quotations, italicized or underlined for this particular title. English is very different from math. In English, it's a lot more about you read this book and then you think about it and you go, okay, so I just read this book. What did I learn from it? What was the plot? What were the main characters doing? What does the author want the reader to grasp from this? Whereas in mathematics, you look at a problem and you go, okay, this is the problem. We know this, this, and this. What are we trying to find? Okay, we're trying to find this and this. Okay, let's write this all out so I have it all set out visually. Then you start formulating reasons behind which direction you're going to take it, and you start doing all the representation. And then you come to a solution. And then you stand up in front of the class, or you talk to your peer, or even you explain to your teacher, this is how I did it, this is how I did each step, this is how I represented it, and this is my solution. And typically with math, it's black and white. Okay, that's the solution, or that's not the solution. In English, there are so many different ways to interpret something, and technology has to be able to anticipate that. And we're not quite at that stage yet with technology. Whereas I feel like technology could be so much more useful for my mathematics classroom than it would be for my English classroom. But then again, I've only taken a mathematics technology class. Maybe if I took a technology class that was more based on all the different content areas like English, history, science, math, art, music, I might be able to see all of the benefits. But at this current moment, I see so many more benefits for the mathematics classroom, and I honestly can't wait to start exploring them.